Fiora AD Carry and Fiora Support, two completely new picks. This is Blackpink Fiora, a Grandmaster Fiora AD Carry player, and this is Dr. Ricky, a Master Fiora Support player. Both of these are weird picks, taking a split pusher into a 2 vs 2 lane full of CC, tanks, and high damage. But both have great reasons for it. Fiora AD Carry, a serious playstyle according to his presentation, using his parry to steal enemies CC and combo their AD Carry, then going for a full damage Essence Reaver and Stormrazor build to burst enemies, then into Radiant Virtue for a surprising healing combo with his ult, a full speed build, no longer being a bruiser, instead spamming Q to jump in and out of fights, and Fiora Support, starting off the game with a crazy level 1 solo invade, averaging 15 deaths per game, but still carrying a lot of them, and also having a special build that means his low level doesn't matter, becoming a burst and split pushing support, something that simply should never exist. I interviewed them both to find their secrets to making these picks work. This channel is all about staying ahead of the meta, so I have something very OP to show you and a way to get a free League skin. This is Mobilytics, our new sponsor, the ultimate League desktop companion app that has some actual game-changing new features. First off, gold difference in-game, letting you see how each player compares to their opponent, showing you the actual state of the game. This is so useful for avoiding tilt. Another game-changing new feature, item pop-ups, showing the huge power spikes for all champions, so if an enemy buys a vital item, you see it first. Also having a daily login bonus, 3 days and you're rewarded with a free League skin, with loads more new features like unique champion tutorials in Champ Select, automatic rune importing to your client, in-game you have the summoner spell tracker, jungle timers and stats tracking that we all love, and after your victory, Mobilytics gets even better, having a highlights tab to show all of your best moments and your worst, so you know exactly where to improve. I absolutely love this app, it's a huge improvement from anything I've used in the past, and I highly recommend you download it for free from the link in the description and start winning right away. Back to our players, Blackpink Fiora and Dr. Ricky. Blackpink, named after the K-pop group, has been an AD carry main ever since his brother introduced him to the game in Season 4. However, his favourite champion has always been Fiora, so starting from playing this pick in low elo with friends, where they would pick supports and force him to carry everyone, he then joined the Belgium, Netherlands and Luxembourg Regional League, and when it wasn't banned, he would play Fiora bot lane. Even organised teams had no clue how to deal with it, getting 2v2 killed and losing to his unique build. With this new confidence, he took it to ranked for the first time, and in Season 13 managed to hit Grandmaster EU West with this pick. Dr. Ricky, on the other hand, the Fiora support, has been a Fiora-only player ever since Season 5. From the old ult dashing version to the modern reworked version, he's always stuck around, and he's played everything you can imagine, from Omni Stone Fiora to one-shot Fiora, and now something completely new, Fiora Support. His new favourite, going first strike and full AD, and really enjoying seeing the enemy team freak out when he pops someone with a support. He believes that this build is one of the only champions that can solo any other champion no matter how far behind you are. Even against mid laners, his damage is too high for them to deal with, and with it he climbed all the way to Master, Fiora Support only. So how do these builds actually work? Well, since they're both bot lane, in many ways they're similar, starting with Fiora's Q, a dash and a poke ability, ideal against ranged opponents. Fiora AD Carry mainly uses this to get CS with low risk, while Fiora Support is using it to farm gold with his support item and poke enemies down. The W, the parry, neither pick would work without this ability. In bot lane they play against a lot of hook champions, so this ability not only invalidates a whole class of supports, but also redirects their CC onto their AD carry, causing them to die. It's a nightmare to play support against a Fiora, there's no good way to use your CC. And not only that, but the parry also slows enemy attack speed by 50%, pretty much countering AD carries. So in this lane against a ton of auto attackers, their damage is ruined, giving Fiora a huge advantage in 2 vs 2s, almost like having a free exhaust for every fight. Fiora's E in this lane is simply a DPS tool, which they can use to burst the squishy champions in bot lane. However, the slow as well is very useful to chase enemies down. And of course the ultimate, amazing for 1 vs 1s, but 2v2s are even better, giving Fiora and her lane partner a ton of free healing after every kill, so comboing this with her parry stun, the true damage and any CC from your support, at level 6 the enemy AD carry is not going to survive, and once Fiora does get a kill, the healing starts, keeping the duo lane alive, never having to trade kills. So that is the theory of why these picks should work, but let's get into game to see all the tricks they use to make this happen, because it's not so simple. Fiora AD carry's plan starts in Champ Select with this presentation, not a troll, a serious playstyle, aiming to prove this pick works and hopefully stop his teammates from griefing, showing the best combos and also explaining this strategy is quite simple for teammates to play with, with, easy for any support to join in. Comparing this to Support Fiora, his game starts a lot differently. Instead of informing his teammates about his pick, he's sprinting down mid lane into this bush, already starting his game plan. He doesn't need words to explain it, he needs action, and that is why he does this quite insane strategy of hiding in this bush and waiting for enemies. You might have noticed he has First Strike, a vital part of Fiora support. His main goal is to get Blade of the Ruin King as fast as possible, so he generates gold from this rune, the support item, and kills. So at level 1, he's trying to harass an enemy just to generate some extra gold. It may look like he's inting, and he definitely kind of is, but he's really just trying to trade his time for as much gold as possible, even trading his life for a first blood. This isn't a big team advantage, but it's great for Fiora, already speeding towards his first item. Both players get to lane and take Q at level 1. In this lane, Fiora is not a strong level 1 champion, as her escape ability is the same as her damage ability, so both players play quite safe. Fiora AD carry plays back, walking up to use Q to get the CS, while Fiora support camps in bushes, queuing out of the bush to poke and then immediately returning back to safety. At level 2 they take parry and can now look for an outplay. Outplays are the reason that these two players are in high elo, using this uncommon bot laner to surprise enemies. Usually level 2 is when most bot laners want to go for a big trade, and Fiora really takes advantage of this. If the enemy throws any CC, she'll be there ready to tank it and parry to turn the fight around, making sure to know before the fight starts which abilities he can parry. So in these early fights, enemies will lose a whole ability and Fiora will gain a stun, making them very one-sided. For example, Nautilus. He relies on hook and auto attacks to be a useful champion. He is nothing without them, and so if you parry them, it will lead to his death. Our AD carry player's speciality is going for a QW through CC to create his own, such as queuing through a Caitlyn trap or a well-timed Karma stun. He can reposition the stun onto an enemy and use this to get a kill. Taking his E at level 3, Fiora can now look to chase enemies down. On support, our player takes Flash Ignite for the damage, but on AD carry, Blackpink takes Flash Ghost, asking his support to take heal, so if enemies ever overextend to his tower, he can Ghost and start running them down. The support can't risk peeling or CCing you, as he might just get stunned himself, or even stun his AD carry, which would be even more tilting. You can probably see by now that the bot lane matchups are quite favourable for Fiora, even better than lots of top lane ones. In fact, there are many free matchups like champions such as Seraphine or Janna, who have very predictable CC and no escapes to run away from him, and even if Fiora gets a bad support which enemies start to target, she can jump in front of them, blocking it using the parry and then turn the play around, acting more like a Braum than a bruiser. In lane there is one big downside, especially for Fiora AD carry. He is higher risk, having to be more active in the lane to get CS. So our player invented a new strategy using fleet footwork as his keystone. It's useful in lane every time he procs it, but he can also leave lane and find a camp quickly as it gives double healing on monsters. So he can Q a monster, run away, and then Q it again before the camp resets and gain more health. It's a perfect fix for if he gets stuck under tower. At level 6, Fiora AD carry can now look to go for a 1 vs 2, and meanwhile Fiora support is running into the enemy tower to dive and trade his life for the enemy AD carry. He's still aiming to get his Blade of the Ruin King as fast as possible, and just wants to get as much gold as fast as he can, happy to trade his life to get ahead. With a well-timed ult and 4 vital procs as well as Ignite, he will kill an AD carry, happy to trade his life to deny them getting the CS and XP. Meanwhile, Fiora AD carry is stronger than most bot lanes at this stage. It's just hard for enemy supports to do anything about him killing their AD carry. He can sprint in, dump all of his high damage, and at any time dodge their CC, with both players able to look for 2 vs 2s and 3 vs 3s, as after they get a single kill they can heal back up. But here is where the builds start to get interesting. Fiora AD carry is rushing to 1050 gold. Having started Longsword and Refillable Pot, he can base on this amount to buy Kerchi Shard and a whole Sheen. With these used together, he has a surprisingly high damage burst on his Q, then going right into Essence Reaver. His goal with this item is to completely solve Fiora's mana problems and spam Q as much as he wants. It also gives him a lot of damage and allows him to shred through towers, so anytime he gets left alone he will get plates, aiming to quickly force the first tower, and after he skips boots, prioritizing getting Stormrazor first, an item he loves for the speed that it gives. This build is very high damage, perfect for split pushing, but also very high speed with low cooldowns, so he can jump in and out of fights, never having to auto attack. Funnily, these two players have one very similar thing about them, even though the roles are different, and that is the way they deal with the XP disadvantage from being in bot lane. Their builds are not made for long fights or survivability or healing or even wave clear. It's all about spending any gold they have to increase their combo damage, letting them win 1v1s, burst enemies who are meant to usually kill them, and then dump the rest of their damage into a tower, and that is why Fiora support is rushing Blade, aiming for the highest possible single target damage, and then following that up with a Yumu's Ghost Blade. So in mid-game on support, he can play like an assassin split pusher. Yes, this sounds terrible to have to play against. He can destroy a turret in a few hits and his Q, so he stays in a side lane. He's happy to look for 1v1s, they're not easy, but he does have the damage to win them. The risk-reward balance is just amazing for Fiora support. If he loses, it doesn't really matter, as he can just base, buy some more cheap AD, and get right back into a side lane to keep pressuring. But if he somehow manages to win a 1v1 against an enemy carry, then that is huge. It lets him keep pushing and force another enemy to come respond to him, meaning his team can do whatever they want. It's so annoying for a support to be doing this, not letting enemies just fight and play the game. He's always distracting an important member of the enemy team, so his team can have an advantageous 4v4. Fiora AD carry now does something very weird, buying Radiant Virtue. Since his first 2 items were full damage, he doesn't really need any more, instead opting for this new strategy. It's very unique on Fiora as it gives him a burst of health when he presses R, so he can use this to gain health and make it more likely he can proc all of the vitals. It also heals all of his teammates nearby, very similar to his ultimate, so the synergy together with the AoE ult heal is very unique and useful. This item is all about being useful in teamfights, giving this huge healing zone more like a Kindred than a Fiora, but he's also happy to split push just like support, which is a rare thing for an AD carry to be able to do, giving your team a new win condition. Usually an AD carry should provide high DPS. Instead of this, Fiora can win games using macro, especially if his top laner can also split push. Enemies are going to constantly have to react to your plays instead of make their own, but teamfights is where both of these builds become super interesting. Fiora AD carry with the Q spamming build is always dancing around the edge of the fight. This build is so fast and hard to catch. His goal is to find an enemy who has a stun and then save his parry for it. When the enemy uses it, he returns the stun, giving him a perfect target to use ult on. The Radiant Virtue starts healing him and his teammates nearby, so they can be kept high health while they burst through this one enemy. He can then pop his ghost and look for even more kills. Teamfights are definitely the hardest part of the game for this build, always having to remain mobile and never get CC'd, otherwise he will die right away, as he is not a bruiser. And honestly, Fiora support is even harder here. He has no tankiness at all. His goal instead is just to use ult and all of his burst damage to kill one important enemy. That's all. He would love to get more kills if possible, but even trading his life for a carry is ideal. I think it's unrealistic to expect a champion with 0 safety, low gold, and quite low XP to be able to survive in these fights. That's why his scorelines look so bad. But to be fair to him, he does his job well. He waits until enemies are preoccupied with someone else, picks his target, ults them, and then takes down an enemy carry. The rest of the fight is not his responsibility. To rate these picks, we have to talk about the big downside. For Fiora AD carry, it's the lack of DPS compared to a marksman. This build does do a good job of making up for it, and his objective damage and tower damage is still great, but he is low range. However, for Fiora support, the downsides are a bit more obvious. From your AD carry having 0 peel or CC to help them, and also being super squishy. Well, it's not just squishy, more like if he gets hit by one Teemo Mushroom or an Ezreal Q, he's going to lose half of his health, and that is why he dies so much. But in exchange, he takes good risks, able to get some kills even if he does die. I think it's quite similar to the Baus, where people will either think he's a genius or a terrible teammate, compared to Fiora AD carry, which does require you to be mechanically skilled, but it clearly is a viable pick even up to Grandmaster, and if I had to pick one to be the one I'd recommend, it would definitely be AD carry, but Fiora support is just really fun. Our players have 2 ban recommendations: Kalista, who can kite your Q and never get hit, and Nyla, a champion that can dodge your auto attacks, preventing you from hitting vitals and making your damage much lower. For the full Fiora AD carry build, we have the high AD items and Radiant Virtue that we already mentioned, and finishing the build off with situational items, like Shield Bow to fix his lack of lifesteal, Ravenous Hydra to help him split push, Gale Force to catch mobile enemies, or even Blade for more damage. The Fiora support build starts Spectral Sickle, rushing Blade, Swifty's boots with magical footwear for the absolute cheapest boots possible, into Ghost Blade, then Tiamat into Ravenous Hydra again to make him a great split pusher, having a goal of getting these 3 items by 20 minutes, finishing the build with Hullbreaker if possible to make him an even bigger side lane threat. The runes are just as important, with the Fleet Footwork and Healing page to keep Fiora AD carry alive throughout laning phase, but for support it's all about gold, with First Strike, Futures Market and and Treasure Hunter. This video was super fun to make, so thanks to both players for all of this amazing information. If you want to see more of either of them, they both have Twitch channels, links in the description. And thanks as well to Mobalytics for sponsoring this video, the new best League of Legends companion app with so many new features. It's a huge improvement from anything I've used in the past, and I highly recommend you download it for free from the link in the description. Thanks so much for watching.